My Lord Chief Justice of the Republic of Zambia, the President of the AFPA, the outgoing President of the AFPA, the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General, the Solicitor General, Your Excellencies, keynote speaker, all other distinguished protocols observed. I'm deeply honored to also stand here and to speak on the subject of the AFCFTA, which is the topical theme for our conversation this year. I'm to speak on building competitive commercial firms in Africa in the age of the after. Why do we have to speak about building competitive firms? For after all, we are all lawyers. And as lawyers, we run firms. We are fundamentally a private sector industry with public sector wings. Law is no more just a profession, in respect of which the pride of being a lawyer was just the end in itself. The truth of the matter is law is a commercial venture. It is an enterprise, in respect of which young people today called to the bar dream not only of being respected lawyers, but more importantly, being people who can make ends meet and make a life for themselves. Therefore, the average person being called to the bar today doesn't necessarily see himself as just the best litigating attorney who is respected for the sake of being a litigating attorney, or the one who represents public interest and therefore is a public defender, or for that matter, the best criminal attorney. Lawyers today essentially dream of being in the private sector and making money, commercially speaking. So making money is no more a vice one to be ashamed of. It is in that sense that we have to now speak about the new game in town. What is that game in town? Commercial law practice dominates the legal landscape in Africa today. Yet unfortunately, few law firms are positioning themselves to exploit the advantages offered by the AFCFTA. A reflection of market trends will paint a picture that compels us in Africa to start thinking anew. Free market economies have meant that corporations and commercial firms and enterprises have been making profits in Africa, and these profits unfortunately have gone to benefit many largely Western and other law firms outside of the continent itself. There is, however, as I indicated, a generational shift in the outlook of legal practice, in which the average lawyer today wants to benefit commercially from the free market economies and the reforms that have been going on in Africa for the better part of nearly 3 decades. Now, the period of commercial reform in Africa, especially in the area of legal practice, has seen some gains. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. It has seen some gains, especially in recent times, where recent times perhaps may be defined as the last 20 years, in which law firms have seen increasing cross-border referrals, transactional coordination, local content partnerships among law firms, joint bidding initiatives, and a situation in which local law advice in arbitral proceedings. I was at the International Bar Conference that held recently in Mexico to speak on the issue of cross-border practice in Africa. And some of the things that were identified as key problems, which unfortunately remain stagnant, are the difficulties of moving across Africa. The difficulties of even knowing which lawyers are in which areas of practice in Africa. The African lawyer is still very much a practitioner at home. He doesn't seem to care so much about what happens beyond his borders, and this is something that needs to change immediately. Let's look at some statistics. The global turnover of legal practice is $829 billion United States dollars. In the United States, the annual turnover is $350 billion US dollars for law firms. In the European region, 208 billion euros. What is the statistics for Africa? I'm sure many of you will not be surprised that there is no statistics for Africa. But perhaps the reason that is partly because we have not been so serious about even documented the cross-border experience of legal practice. Why don't we have facts and figures on the practice of law in Africa. Perhaps this is something that the AFBA would want to take up. We must know the annual turnover of legal practice in Africa, and we must even be more interested of the annual turnover of legal practice in our various countries. African large-scale and high-volume transactional work, unfortunately, have been dominated by foreign firms.